What is the most pain, and whatever definition of the word you want to use, you've experienced behind the camera as a director that yielded the most truth on the screen?
Oh my, that yielded the most truth. That's what a great question that is.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Mr. Howard, always an honor to see you, sir. Thank you for taking the time.
Pleasure, pleasure.
There is a line that we hear very early in the movie. It's a voiceover narration from Jude Law where he says, "In pain, we find truth." And I would love for you, if you don't mind, to think back over your career, an amazing career full of movies that I assume were not easy to make. I'd love to know, as a filmmaker, what is the most pain, and whatever definition of the word you want to use, you've experienced behind the camera as a director that yielded the most truth on the screen?
Oh my, that yielded the most truth. That's what a great question that is. Uh, Weather factors in to those things a lot, and that kind of situation. It's not cosmic and profound, but when the circumstances of the real world suddenly factor into a scene, particularly for the actors, but sometimes it's the photography as well. Sometimes it's a light change. It's something like that that it may look like a horrible burden, and yet it winds up yielding a memorable moment. And whether it's like I did a movie called The Missing, and there was a scene where it was a Western, and it was just bitter cold, and there's a scene where a couple of the actors are literally shivering, and we just couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't. They weren't supposed to be shivering, but they were, and it turned out to be a great moment. Those kinds of kind of happy accidents where things look like they're about to go terribly wrong, and yet something emerges, and especially in live action filmmaking, there's still this possibility of these discoveries that come out of nowhere, or you tend to feel are disastrous potentially, and wind up being valuable.
Well, not just because I'm biased and talking to you from Chicago, but also because there's a fire truck over your shoulder. There had to be some pain on Backdraft.
Oh, well, when we wrapped Backdraft, I literally went over, because the only person who'd come close to getting hurt was Cedric Young, who was a firefighter still on the job. And in one scene, he's got his eyebrow singed off. And so he didn't get burned, thankfully. But that was the closest we had to an injury. So we'd gotten through it. And I remember mimicking the closing moments of the first Rocky, where the line is spoken, ain't gonna be no rematch. And I remember hugging Brian Grazer because the movie was finally over, and I said, ain't gonna be no sequel. I was so glad to get through that movie with nobody getting hurt, and us doing something that I could already tell I was going to be proud of.
Well, we're proud of it here in Chicago. So really quick before they pull me out of here, we just lost a true hero, not just an American hero, but a true hero with Mr. Jim Lovell. This year is the 30th anniversary of Apollo 13. And I have a question that I've always wanted to ask you, if you don't mind. I'd love to ask you about filming Houston, We Have a Problem with Tom Hanks. One, just your memories of that day, but also I'd love to know the conversations you had with Mr. Lovell about that moment, because wasn't the line he actually said on the day, Houston, we've had a problem?
Yes, I think it was. And it was typed in the script, Houston, we have a problem. So the original screenwriters had already either didn't know or adapted it. And when Jim said that, but it also had already been coined and used in popular culture as Houston, we have a problem. So it was one of these things that was kind of a famous line. And Jim was saying, well, they always get that wrong, and it's wrong in the script. And I said, well, I think it's going to be wrong in the movie. Because it just works just that much better.
And do you know in that moment when Tom says it, like, this is it, this is what everyone's going to say?
Well, again, it was something that people did say. It was not as much as they do now, but so it was already semi-famous. It was
For sure.
But Jim, let me just say, what an extraordinary person to have known. Such an honor to be able to say that I really did know Jim in Maryland, but to understand what made Jim tick, to get to know him, to be able to call him a friend, and recognize what that kind of capability within an individual, and that's this kind of straightforward, honest patriotism that is about action and commitment, and belief in the virtue of a system, and it's not politics and it's not grandstanding. It's just how he lived his life, and I'm just so grateful to have known Jim.
Well, we're grateful that you were able to bring his story to the masses. I grew up in Houston. I live in Chicago. Your filmography has meant a lot to me, sir. I'm way over my time, but I just want to say thank you for always being so kind and one of my heroes. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Nice talking.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.